Once, nestled deep within the heart of a shadowy forest, there stood a quaint village. This village was like any other, but for one ominous detail that sent shivers down the spines of its inhabitants: a forest, brooding and ancient, that surrounded their homes. This forest was no ordinary forest. It was said to be the dwelling place of a witch, a being of malevolence and ancient power. Her name, forgotten by time, echoed only in hushed whispers among the villagers. For generations, the villagers had lived in fear of her curse, never daring to venture too close to the forest's edge. The story of the witch's curse was a chilling one, passed down through the ages. Legend had it that she was once a woman of flesh and blood, an outcast from the village who had sought solace within the depths of the forest. There, she had delved into the dark arts, wielding power that mortals were never meant to possess. In her quest for ultimate power, she had sealed her fate, binding her spirit to the forest for all eternity. As the years passed, the witch's malevolence grew, and she began to cast her curse upon the village. Every year, on the eve of All Hallows' Eve, she would emerge from the forest, her presence heralded by a sinister wind that carried the stench of death. She would creep through the village under the cover of darkness, and with a single touch she would mark one unlucky soul with her curse. The cursed ones would suffer unspeakable horrors. Their homes would be plagued by poltergeists, their crops would wither and die, and their families would be torn apart by madness and despair. Desperation and fear gripped the villagers as they watched their loved ones succumb to the curse, powerless to stop it. Eleanor was a young woman who had grown up hearing the tales of the witch's curse. She had always been a skeptic, scoffing at the superstitions that had paralyzed her village for so long. To her, the curse was nothing more than a concoction of fear and ignorance, a ghost story to keep children in line. One fateful autumn, as the eve of All Hallows' Eve drew near, Eleanor's skepticism would be put to the test. On the night of the cursed eve, a chill hung in the air, and the moon cast an eerie glow over the village. The wind, carrying the same foul stench as the villagers had described, rustled through the trees. Eleanor, convinced that the curse was a farce, decided to defy tradition. She ventured to the edge of the forest, determined to confront the witch and expose her as a mere figment of imagination. As she stood on the forest's threshold, a voice whispered in her ear, a voice like the rustling leaves and the creaking branches. "Who dares to challenge me?" The voice hissed, sending a shiver down Eleanor's spine. She turned to see a figure emerge from the shadows, a figure cloaked in tattered robes with gnarled hands that reached out to her. It was the witch herself, her eyes gleaming with a malevolent light. Eleanor, her bravado wavering, found herself paralyzed by fear. The witch's gaze bore into her soul, and with a single touch she marked Eleanor with her curse. A searing pain shot through Eleanor's body, and her vision blurred as darkness closed in around her. When Eleanor awoke, she found herself back in the village, her body racked with pain. She had no memory of what had transpired in the forest, but she could feel the weight of the curse upon her. Despair washed over her as she realized that the curse was no mere superstition. It was real, and it had chosen her as its next victim. In the days that followed, Eleanor's life unraveled. Her once thriving farm withered, and her livestock fell ill. Strange and terrifying apparitions haunted her every waking moment, and her nights were filled with tortuous nightmares. She could feel the darkness of the curse closing in around her, threatening to consume her completely. Desperate for a solution, Eleanor turned to the village elders, seeking their guidance. They told her that there was only one way to break the curse: confront the witch and beg for her mercy. But the risk was great, for the witch was a being of unparalleled malevolence, and those who had dared to face her had never returned. With no other choice, Eleanor embarked on a treacherous journey into the heart of the forest. She walked deeper and deeper into the shadowy wilderness, her heart pounding in her chest. The forest seemed to come alive around her, its twisted branches reaching out to ensnare her, and eerie whispers filled the air. As she ventured deeper, Eleanor could feel the presence of the witch drawing nearer. She could sense the malevolence that hung heavy in the air, like a storm on the horizon. The forest grew darker, the trees closing in around her, and the wind whispered warnings of the horrors that awaited her. Finally, Eleanor came upon a clearing, and there, amidst the gnarled trees, stood the witch. Her eyes bore into Eleanor, and her voice echoed with the weight of centuries. She demanded to know why Eleanor had come. With trembling resolve, Eleanor told the witch of her suffering, of the curse that had torn her life apart. She begged for the witch's mercy, for an end to the torment that had consumed her. The witch regarded Eleanor with a gaze that seemed to pierce her very soul. For a moment, there was silence, and then the witch spoke. "The curse is a burden I have carried for centuries," she said. "But I see now that it is a burden you do not deserve." With a wave of her hand, the witch lifted the curse from Eleanor, and the pain that had gripped her for so long began to fade. Eleanor felt a weight lift from her shoulders, and she knew that she was free. But as she turned to leave, the witch's voice stopped her. "Remember this," she said. "The curse may be broken, but the forest holds many secrets, and not all of them are benevolent. Beware the darkness that lurks within." Eleanor nodded, her heart filled with gratitude, and she left the forest behind. As she returned to the village, she knew that she had faced a darkness few could imagine and emerged unscathed. The villagers, once bound by fear, looked upon her with awe and respect. And so, the legend of the witch's curse lived on in the village, but it was no longer a tale of terror. It was a story of courage and redemption, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. The forest, once a place of dread, became a symbol of resilience and the enduring power of the human spirit.